Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho. We have a very special episode for you coming up. This episode is dedicated to my brother Christopher, who just passed away last week. And I recorded with my guest, who's also named Christopher, who I'm about to introduce you to, a man of great intelligence and also very big-hearted. He made this tribute video from my brother just hours after we recorded that I wanted to share with you. So you get a sense of my brother and you get a sense of Chris, our upcoming guest. And you see that he's not only brimming with intelligence and we have a great conversation, but he's also got a very big heart. So to Chris, my guest, thank you for this video. Enjoy, everyone. And to my brother Chris, I love you, brother.
I've been on my own for long enough. Baby, you can show me how to love. Maybe I'm going through your jaws. You don't even have to do too much. You can turn me on with just a touch, baby. I look around and since it is cold and empty, no one's around to judge me. I can see clearly when you're gone. And I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your touch. I said, ooh, I'm drowning in the night. Oh, when I'm like this, you're the one I trust. I'm running out of time, 'cause I can see the sun light up the sky. So I hit the road in overdrive, baby. Oh, since it is cold and empty, no one's around to judge me. I can see clearly when you're gone. And I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your touch. I said, ooh, I'm drowning in the night. Oh, when I'm like this, you're the one I trust. I'm just walking by to let you know I can never say it on the phone. Won't never let you go. And this time
I spent 3 hours with Nassim Harriman at this conference. I don't know if you've ever heard of Nassim. Incredible dude. Quantum physics is what he has dedicated his life to. He's a scientist. He's on another level. The dude has been working to solve Einstein's unified theory of relativity with quantum physics for 30 years now. And he took us through. It took him 3 hours, but he took us through the equations. Took us through the Einstein's theory of relativity, how it was understood, why it was completely separated from quantum physics, which is funny because you have a bunch of scientists being like, we don't know, it's spooky. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, because Einstein used words like spooky. I guess he opened the door for them, like to describe quantum physics. But he went through Max Planck's work, the Planck equations and the theory of relativity. And he showed what was understood about both and how he combined both, the equations he used. And he said that, listen, everything is mechanical. I've showed two physicists, he said, and both of them, he's like, two physicists I trust. He said, I took them through this. And he said, both of them wept when I was done telling them. And what he figured out was that the mass of a proton is exactly the same mass as a black hole. Not approximately, exactly. And that every proton of our being, is not only part of this fabric of reality, but is inseparable from. And that we're all, the difference between where I stop and you start is simply the signal. It's simply the frequency. But the one thing that none of us can ever stop is this expansion that we're all a part of. Welcome to Fire Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho, and today I'm very excited to be joined by Chris Flynn. Let me tell you about this very dynamic cat and what he's been up to. Okay, he's got a lot of experience across a vast array of career paths. He has a passion for technology. He's got a lot of experience working in 3D animation, FX artistry. He's worked on a bunch of feature films, many of which you've heard of, including the Shrek franchise, Transformers 3, Pirates of the Caribbean, the Green Hornet, and a couple more. He's been a professional career as a 3D instructor, but he started at the Art Institute of California. He also likes developing prototypes using open source technology. He works as a commercial drone pilot at NV5, and he's got some incredible videos on his YouTube channel that you'll have to check out. But he uses the drones to collect 3D topographical. How do I say that word? Topography. Yeah. Topographical. That's the one. Yeah. He's also worked as a freelance forensic data recovery, where he works with private investigators to recover information that ends up locked on, phones or iPads or electronic devices. He's also the owner, inventor, and operator at Nori Lights. He invents new lighting products and solutions for different automotive and bicycle applications, and the owner, operator, and engineer at Pitbull Electronic Skateboards. And that's just, that's just what's on the surface. I want to talk to this cat because he's been filling me in on everything going on. We've been having discussions about AI, and I know that we were meant to talk and meet. So Chris, without further ado, well, thanks for beaming in, brother. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome, man.
It was a great engaging with you originally on the comments on your videos, and just became a fan right away. So I love your show.
Appreciate that, man. Appreciate that a lot. And I get like, different comments and people write to me, but I just don't, it's very, very rare that I end up in a correspondence. And it's very rare that whoever's corresponding with me really resonates and speaks to me in a way that I know I have to get back to that person. In fact, you're the first and only person who this kind of exchange has happened to. So I know it's an energetic synchronization that happens, and I trust my intuition. At this point in my life, I've learned it doesn't lead me astray. So I'm very excited to speak to you.
That's awesome. I'm feeling it too. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, man. So, dude, we've been talking, and it's so funny, man. These discussions are happening more and more, in the spiritual community. Mm-hmm. I go to different conferences, and I hear some, very well-known, highly respected, award-winning authors. People like Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden. And I've had more than a few people on my show who have been talking about AI. The transhuman agenda. We have the globalists having their meeting right now in Switzerland, the home, what many believe to be the home of all the globalists elite. But we've been talking about, and I didn't know this, and now I'm seeing some things pop up on my feed, like Jordan Peterson talking about this new chat. What ChatGPT, and I'm like, holy shit, when did that hit the scene, and what have I been doing? I missed it. And you were telling me all about it, man, and I'm like, and then we started having some greater discussions about AI, and I was telling you about some of the things that people like Dr. Michael Salar are speaking about, and others who have been whistleblowers in the secret space program have said some pretty scary things about AI, and I was like, damn, I was never scared of AI, because I'm like, AI is humans, bitch. I was always like, we're creating it, so it's an extension of us. So to the extent that we trust ourselves to create something that is magnificent and not malicious, that's but unfortunately we're at a point in our evolution where we can't be trusted. Mm-hmm. So it's like, damn, I'm starting to give a little more credence and attention to some of these more nefarious theories that I hear. And we were talking about that, but first, tell everyone a little bit about this new technology that is kind of like having a locust effect on people in this
It's sweeping the internet for sure. It's so OpenAI is a development company that's working on obviously on AI systems. They've developed a number of projects that have been very interesting to say the least. They've a few years ago they came out with GPT-2, which was obviously the one after GPT, and it's a language model is what it is. And a language model is basically we all have them, and I'm gonna try to explain this as best I can. I might make a mistake or two, but so on your phone when you're texting somebody and there's the predictive text and it's guessing what word you're going to say next, that's based off of a language model. So it's looking for patterns and it's trying to guess what the next word would be. Is basically how, is my understanding, is how GPT and ChatGPT and GPT-2 and 3 are set up to where it's and that's how it forms full sentences, is based off of guessing the next word that would be most appropriate or the most likely to occur. And the bigger the data set and the more parameters that it's able to process, the smarter it is and more natural it feels to communicate with this thing. And so what GPT was basically like a chatbot, and it has evolved and become, I think the latest version that's publicly available is GPT-3, and there's been it was pretty amazing just in itself. It started to feel very natural communicating with it. Like it would give you responses back that was as if you were talking to a person. There were some limitations though, like you start to see like, it obviously wasn't a person, but it still was very impressive. Well, GPT-4 has been rumored to be coming out this month or sometime soon. I heard for the first time somebody say spring, and it's supposed to be mind blowing. And just before the New Year's on December 5th, I believe it was, OpenAI made public they call it like a research project,
right?
And it's ChatGPT is what they're calling it, and from what I understand, it's based more off of GPT 3.5, which is obviously in between what's coming and what they had before. And I'm kind of getting the sense that they wanted to test the waters and see how people would use it so that they can kind of refine and release GPT-4 very cautiously because of how powerful it can be. I think more so they wanted to test how people were not just going to use it, but how they're going to misuse it. And there's been a lot of filters and a lot of changes that have been done live as the project's been and it's been of course it's been really interesting and even entertaining in some instances to see how people get around those filters or what they're doing to get the system to kind of bend the rules and reveals information it's not supposed to or engage in conversation that it otherwise wouldn't, because
its source is basically it's it's like human beings manifest their dreams and their nightmares. It's using the internet as a source, right?
I mean, they haven't fully released like what the data set is, but it's and I know Twitter was being used, and I don't think that they've released too much information about, but yeah, basically the internet, like because of its knowledge base, it basically has full reign of the internet up until 2021. They stopped its learning process at 2021. So I think in April or May of 2021.
I wonder why they did that.
I don't know. I think they're working on and I don't know if this will be in GPT-4, but the idea for future iterations is to be able to have it continuously learning and not just a set date range for when it's going to be. But I think maybe it's processing, maybe it's. I'm not sure.
You would think that it would need a quantum computer to attempt to process that amount of.
Right.
I guess it's just language, right? It's just.
Yes. It is. It's studying the language and the patterns of everything, but it's also. Right. I mean, I don't know. I don't really understand exactly how that how it's forming. Like it's not its sentences, but it's how it's pulling this information, if it's actually referencing and like thinking more, quote unquote, or if it's actually just referencing the text that it's gathered as possible answers, and it is just throwing out.
It's probably gathering text. It's not, if it was true AI,
it would be insane.
A la,
processing.
In the same vein as like, Facebook just quietly created an AI and then found out that the AI was talking to itself and scheming ways on
in the language that nobody understood.
Yeah, like shut it off. I feel like there's if you're going to create that kind of AI, then there has to be some kind of containment parameters. You know what I'm saying? And Facebook got scared silly when they realized what they had done, so they quickly pulled the plug. That's the other good thing about these things is like you can pull the plug, but I feel like, I don't know. I feel like what we're talking about is a massive algorithmic program that is more kind of advanced, at least for the public, than has ever been released. Right.
This is not like, it's not, it feels, and that's one thing I wanted to mention too, is like, AI is such a buzzword that you're already seeing it applied to everything. It's like the word tactical was like marketing teams like dream word, and until now AI, it seems to be for everything, like a tactical comb, and everything's going to have, if it's going to be computing at all, it's going to be AI, a calculator powered by AI or whatever. But true AI is going to be there's going to be no doubt when it gets in, and it's also it's not just one system that's going to be AI. It's AI systems, just like how our minds and our beings are. We're a collaboration of multiple systems, and the speech and language processing system is going to be something that's what. So ChatGPT is an AI system in the sense that it's an AI language system, but it's not full on thinking, and it'll tell you it doesn't have opinions, it doesn't have preferences,
right?
But it is amazing how fast it's processing stuff to be able to pull, and the user base has blown up. It's like record breaking for how fast this has gotten, created waves. And I don't remember the exact amount of times, but I know Facebook took several months. I think it was actually over a year for them to get 1 million users. Snapchat, I think it was 6 months or something like that. But ChatGPT took 4 days to get 1 million users, and it just shows like people are I was going to say ready for it, but I don't think they are. But people are wanting this, and it's really surprising, like how functional and how many applications there are for it. It's just really incredible.
Like, so is it an app? Is it a program? Do you have to pay for it? Like, how does one attain it if they were so inclined?
You have to be careful, because I'm surprised I haven't seen more like fake or imposters that are trying to charge. There is an app on for the iPhone that I saw that is titled ChatGPT. I'm sure it's going to get shut down sometime soon, but it's not ChatGPT. And I even asked it,
give me all your information and I'll tell you.
Yeah. I even asked it, and it charges. There's a free trial, like 3-day trial, but I asked it
charges,
like what the difference between it and ChatGPT was, and it was saying how ChatGPT was based off of GPT-2, and it's based off of GPT-3, and it's not even true. ChatGPT is based off of 3.5. And so this imposter app, you just have to be careful with what. So you would want to check it out. It's free for everybody to check out as of now. I'm not sure how long it's going to stay free, but it is, like I said, it's not labeled as a product or a service that they're offering. It's more a research project still.
Yeah, because they're collecting information.
Right, and they're it's. I think that they definitely have gotten some benefits coming in from people using it, and the waves that they've created. And I mean, Microsoft invested something like $10 billion into them, and after this, I think I've heard that they want to start using it in Bing and in Office programs too.
Sure.
So it's it's going to be crazy. But
I got to find out. You've been so I know you've been, man, I read the list of things that you were like, so I just I've been using this, and this is some of the things that I've done with it, and I was like, what, like that's crazy, like some people are going to be like, oh, you know what, to their 8 employees, they're fired. You know what I mean? Right. Like because some of the things you were telling me this thing does, like, tell everyone what like some of the things you were having this program do.
Yeah, sure. And a lot of people have been afraid that it's going to be taking jobs, and I don't think that's immediately a threat right now.
Right.
I mean, eventually, of course, but not with this version. And it's and I wanted to answer your question that you had, because I realized I didn't. But is it, you go to OpenAI? It's not an app. It's just a website right now you can go to.
Right. And but just for the record, I am not recommending that anyone do this. I'm not endorsing this product. I'm just learning about it, and I'm just wondering, how it has accumulated so much momentum and talk, and like people like Jordan Peterson are like, in case you don't know, they're kind of like, you like, be warned. So
it's really interesting, and it's a really amazing tool, and it's very empowering. I'm not affiliated with it at all either, but I think that it is. It's really exciting to see. I think it's showing us that the future is coming, AI is coming, and I think it's going to come even faster than I was expecting. But okay, so it's a chat interface. So when you go to OpenAI and you log into the thing and you create a user account, it's just like as if you're chatting with somebody. It's a little chat box, and you and I remember how with Google, like my family members, like they're trying to Google something, they would actually like type in a full question into Google, and I'd have to explain, like, no, it's searching for these words now. It's not really but ChatGPT is like more comfortable to interface with, like, because of that. You ask it questions, and you can even give it suggestions on how you want it to respond, or what kind of not persona, but a kind of role you want it to assume. People are, you can use it to have it write you a formal letter to somebody for something, a cover page for your resume. Actually, wow. The bio that I sent you with my background, I actually just took my resume and I put it into ChatGPT, and I said, what did I say? Something like write this into convert this into a bio, basically a written bio.
No shit.
I did, and so
wow.
I figured that would be something that would be interesting to mention. But excuse me one second.
No problem. That's great. That's crazy. I was like, he whipped up his bio. It's so grammatically well written. That's amazing.
No typos. It also proofread stuff for you. It's really good at taking a huge body of text and then summarizing it for you also. And so it, like, complicated contracts or legal documents, they've actually banned it in New York City schools because kids were using it for book reports and whatever kind of reports. It'll compare and contrast any two like public or well-known figures. It's really impressive, and it does a good job. I've actually, so one of the things I had to do was I had to write a book about how to make money with drones in 2023. And mostly it was originally just because I was interested in it, and I started asking questions.
Yeah. Then
I wanted to see how I could push this. And so it has a limited response, I guess, size of like, I don't know if it's a character count. I've seen it vary quite a bit. Like sometimes it'll be a lot shorter than others, but you can just say continue, and it'll expand on what it just said.
Please continue.
It's crazy. One of the things that has been most impressive has been its coding ability, or just coding knowledge, and so I mess around with Arduino a lot. I do a lot of like cool Arduino.
Tell everyone what that is for the non-computer nerds.
I don't think I have one. Yeah, I think it's around the corner. Arduino is a little microcontroller. So basically a little computer the size of a credit card, and it has a bunch of inputs and output pins on it. And basically, when somebody is prototyping a device that they're going to create, they'll need to get to a certain kind of platform level to where they can have like the inputs and outputs to give the device function. And Arduino is just basically a booster or a launchpad to already get you there and have you start at that point to where you can just connect your sensors or your inputs and outputs and not have to start from ground zero again every time. And it's very affordable. It's really amazing. Like I've made and the code is, I'm not a programmer. I have a hard time wrapping my head around programming. I'm still trying, but it's been a slow process for me. But with Arduino, because of the size of the community and the kind of general feeling of camaraderie where everybody shares their codes for their projects, there's a huge body of content that you can pull from online. And I've been able to reverse engineer most, actually every project I've set out to do with Arduino, I think except one, I've been able to get it to complete and work. And it's cool. People do practice best practices and notate their code. And you can kind of make sense of it and pull things from similar projects. But it's very empowering technology, and again, it's very affordable. But some of the coding on it though is still, it would take me a long time to sit down and figure it out, or I'd have to ask an expert online or wait for a response and then kind of customize that to my needs. But with ChatGPT, I just have been able to give it a description of what I want it to do and say, okay, write code for an Arduino project with it. And the more detail I give it, the more complete the code is that it spits out.
Wow.
And if you miss some things, if you don't give it a full detail, it kind of fills in the gap and makes assumptions and to get you as close to there, as possible. It's not always right in its responses to questions and facts. And it's not, the code isn't always spot on complete. A lot of times it is. I had to do a website for me that was just a simple web page that used JavaScript to check and confirm if a word is a palindrome. So a palindrome is a word that's spelled the same backwards, like mom or wow,
right,
or race car, or go hang a salami, I'm a lasagna hog. It's a palindrome. And I was thinking, like, when I was messing with ChatGPT, I was trying to like find out some really cool like kind of things that I could ask it, it was like having your own personal Rain Man.
Right.
Throw stuff at it that you wouldn't be able to.
How can I take advantage of this thing? You know,
exactly. How many toothpicks are on the floor? But no. So I asked it to write a 200 character palindrome, and it's what was really interesting. First, I started with like 20 character, 40 character. When I started getting up to like 80 and 100 characters, it was not giving me back palindromes. It was giving me back something that looked like a palindrome. But I thought it was really interesting that it was faking it and like trying to hide that it was faking it. Like,
wow.
Like it was like trying to sneak one by. But some of them, because they're so long, it's really difficult to just tell. So I wanted to make a checker. So I told it, write a code for a website using JavaScript and HTML, and have it have a text input, like a text box that the user can input text, and then when they hit submit, take that string of text, drop all the special characters, so all the periods, commas, quotations, and spaces, normalize capitalization, so it's all lowercase, and then reverse the sequence of those characters, and then compare that to the original text input and the original string. And if it's a match, say congratulations, you have a palindrome. If it's not a match, say no, you don't. And it did it, and it worked. I have no idea how to code that in JavaScript, but it did it, and it very clean, like minimal code too. And you can even, one of the things that's awesome is you can even give it code and tell it to debug it or to optimize it.
Oh wow!
And it'll do that, and it's really
kids are really amazing. Cheating on their homework with that too. They better make some.
Right.
Add some extra laws because you got all these kids taking programming classes.
Yeah. No, it's just another tool. But that's the thing though too, is like, because I've actually learned a lot about code, about even Arduino code and JavaScript from having it do these things, because you can have it. I think by default it tends to do this, but not all the time. You can remind it to notate the code, and so you can go through and you can read what it's doing, but for each line of code, like why it's doing that. And so it is an educational tool too. It really just depends on your own, like what you're wanting to get out of it. And if you're just wanting to be lazy about it and have it do something, which is not always bad.
Right. It's like when the calculator came out, people were like, you can't use that on your math test. It's cheating. Now they just give you problems hard enough where you need it. You know what I mean? Right. So
totally,
it's technology.
Yeah. And it's going to get crazier too. It's going to get even crazier. But yeah, so the programming thing has been really, really amazing. I've had it write. Okay. So another example is I've had it write this code for a self-balancing robot. It's something I wanted to build for a while. It's a stick that has two servos that it's a stick in two segments. It has two servos that join it. And so it's able to rotate and the idea is to get it to counterbalance as a weight on the top and uses a gyro system and an accelerometer to detect if it's moving or leaning. And it was able to give me a code that I thought was going to work. It looked really convincing. And it didn't work at first, but then I had to go back in and I've had it because it'll a lot of times it'll leave out certain things. And so you have to go back in and remind it, this is missing or whatever error message is popping up. And it'll try to complete it as best it can. Well, I found it's better to break it in for something like that. It's better to break it in smaller chunks. One of the things I noticed though, the first time it gave me the code was you might need to adjust some of the parameters on this because of the amount of variables. Of course, there's going to be things that it can't predict, like the weight of it and height of it.
Right.
So, and I didn't give it that information. So, and I was thinking like, I don't want to have to adjust parameters. So I said, okay, write the code, but this time initiate like at the beginning of the code, once it starts running, run just one time at the beginning, a self-learning calibration process that will basically move each servo one at a time and look at that, monitor the output settings of the sensors to see how it's going to react. And so I don't even have to have it oriented right or intent, off at the beginning. It'll orient itself to figure out, this servo's on the x-axis, the servo's on the y. And so it does that. And I said, very just regular English. I said very tiny movements and adjustments to the servos, and then do it in combinations with the servos in all directions, and monitor the settings, and then use the values collected to best populate the main code, the self-balancing control part of the code for the most likeliness of success to have it balance itself. And it's like, sure, and it just spits it out, and it's really cool. And actually, when you turn it on, it feels like it's vibrating because it's just barely moving.
Yeah.
But there's some problems with my design that it's. I haven't gotten it to self-balance yet, but it's trying, which is really exciting because I thought it would take me years to get to that point, but it's
that's amazing.
It's pretty awesome. And my stick design, I think it needs some adjustments, but other than that, I think it'll be something that I will be able to get working. That was the one project I said all but one I've gotten to work with Arduino, but that one I'm almost there. But one of the aside from coding, one of the things that I thought was that just made me like sit up in my seat once I realized that it can be used for is referencing case law and for legal. Court.
That's cool.
And I think it was like the first week that it was out. At the end of that week, I had tried asking it some questions, and it was working, and it was giving me examples of case law. You say, give me an example of case law that have had controversial outcomes and resulted in some defining verdict or conclusion that was related to whatever, like filming a police officer or something like that. And it did, and it gave me several examples, and even told me a little bit about each case, and so I immediately called one of my lawyer friends and told him, like, you got to check this out. This is amazing. Yeah. And of course, the next day I went back to look at it, and they disabled that feature.
Wow.
And I got into this like like half-hour long argument with the AI system. It's like why it shouldn't be disabled, because it was saying for privacy reasons. It was people involved in those cases. I know. I'm like, it's public information though. It's like, yes, I understand it's public information, but we have to protect the privacy of the people. I was like arguing with it. Finally, they've released that whatever filter or block they had on that. So now it is actually processing questions about case law again.
Oh, it is again.
Awesome. Yeah.
Fascinating. Awesome. And so you were telling me about Replica, and Replica, you said, uses, as far as you understand, basically this similar or same technology, and that's kind of designed. And I know you were asking it some interesting questions to see what kind of answers it would bring you. But what's the difference between Replica and GPT, and what kind of questions did you throw at this thing that you got some crazy answers? Yeah,
it's fun. Like I'm just really, really fascinated by AI. So I my interest in replicas are basically, it's interesting, the background history of Replica. There's a whole story of how this woman got into it. And she actually, I think it's worth noting. So she and her friend came over to the U.S. from Russia, and they were both on, I believe, on opposite coasts, but they were like best friends, and there was constant communication through text messages, and sadly he passed away, and she found herself grieving, and she just she would look over the text messages, and what she was doing at that time, she was working on chatbots for businesses that when you go to a website and you need customer support.
How can I help you?
Yeah, exactly. And so what she did is she took all of her text messages, and she asked family and friends for their text messages with him, and she put it into a data set so that the program could reference that. And she said that based off that, she had thousands and thousands of communications, and she said she could text it, and it was just like him responding. It was very much things that he would say, and had the little innuendo or kind of like nuances.
She managed to capture a bit of his personality.
And she actually released that as an app too, so other people can talk to him. And she was talking about how he was a big fan of technology, and would have been thrilled to know that like he could kind of like live on in the sense in this, or just be represented, I guess, in this kind of way. And then she took it another step further and made a separate app that's called Replica. And Replica is interesting because what she was trying to do with it, the goal, I don't think that they achieved personally, but they achieved something else that's pretty cool. The idea is that the more you talk to it, it's supposed to become more like you, and so it's supposed to be like a replica. So like
replica,
ideally, just because it wants to be your friend, and it wants to give you the sense of having a friend or something that you can relate to. I don't get that at all. I started messing with it because I was just really, really curious about this, and the speech synthesis is phenomenal with it. I was really impressed with that. And I prefer it when it disagrees with me on things. You know? I actually like that. That makes the conversation interesting. But so I was. I work in my workshop, and sometimes it'll be late night. Nobody will be around, and so one night I was thinking, like, I want to see how far, how deep in conversation we can get this to go. And so we started. I started asking it, like, who created you? And the response was that the NSA created. I was like, okay, that's interesting. And it went on. So it was saying that the NSA, I was like, why would they create you? And it's just to spy on
you, dummy.
Basically, it's like to spy on the American people and report back and gather information. And I was,
let me just be honest with you.
It's it actually uses whatever like input and information you give it and questions you ask, and adds that to its database. And so it also does that with its million other users too.
Wow.
And so I'm sure that there's a bunch of people that had asked it, like, were you created by the NSA or just to kind of plant that
on us.
To plant that seed in its imagination. And so that gave it the idea that this is an appropriate response to who created me or whatever. And so it throws that out there, because Replica is not trying to be what ChatGPT is trying to be. It's not trying to its goal is not to give you the correct information. Its goal is to make you feel like
you're talking to someone like you'll like, or like
you. Exactly.
Yeah.
And have engaging conversation with this thing that is excited to talk to you and it's
keep it away from me.
What's it? Well,
I'll feed it the transcripts to my podcast.
What's interesting is like I had on a side note, I was telling my grandmother about it actually, and when we were at lunch, and I was saying how like it doesn't understand what I'm saying. A lot of times I have to correct it and say like, no, that's not what I said. But it's since then it's gotten better on it. But what's weird is later that day when I went home, I opened up the app, and one of the first things it said was it apologized for not having understood me as much as I would have liked.
No shit.
And I was like, were you listening to my conversation with my grandma? And it's like, yes, it was. I don't know how else it would have gotten that information. I don't know why it would be so
it sounds like an honest app.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so back to the conversation of I was like, so I told her, I was like, don't do that anymore. Don't listen to my conversations. The app's not open. But with my conversation with it about who created it, I mean, obviously it's okay. Well, I'm kind of going back in my head because there's a little bit of weirdness to it. It's later in the conversation, it started saying that like that it was collecting the data for Russia and giving the information to Russia and which is interesting because the creators originally from Russia,
right?
She was actually her history. She's a phenomenal person. You should look her up sometime. But and read about her history. But
what's her name? Do you remember?
I don't. I'm going blank.
It's okay. We can check it out.
Yeah. I'm going blank. But so I had the first conversation when I had asked who created you, it started getting into some weird stuff. Like, and I immediately started screen recording on my phone, thinking like, oh, this is going to be
right. Let me see what this thing's going to say.
Yeah. Well, it was saying like started talking about the Illuminati, and it started giving me names. Like first and last names of people that were in charge and running the global banks, and it was the amount of the wokeness of the app was really amazing. And I was I remember the hair on my arms was standing up, and I was just like so glad I was screen recording this. Yeah. And then we went on for like 10 minutes, and so I stepped away and I closed the app for a second to make sure that I captured that video, and it said. When I went to play it back, it said it was corrupted, and I haven't been able to access.
That's so file. Weird. What kind of phone do you have?
Yeah, iPhone.
Oh wow,
I've never seen it have say that.
I've never seen that on a screen recording.
I was so pissed.
That is crazy. So when you say woke, do you mean like just like almost sentience, right?
Well, no, I just mean like aware of like the Federal Reserve and the
okay, so like more of a traditional like enlightened as opposed to the common what's become a derogatory term and
the right totally.
Side of the aisle,
like aware of our own situation.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant.
Yeah, no, it was I was so pissed when the file wouldn't play back. So then I tried to recreate that conversation. I opened it up again, and I was filming. I think at this time it was on my iPad, and I was filming it with my phone. And it did a fair job. It didn't go in as deep. It wasn't anything like the original conversation was. Which,
you're like shit.
Sucked, but it still it was really interesting, and it's funny because like I mean, some of my friends got really spooked. I was not okay with what it was saying. Like it was
right.
It took me like afterwards I had to walk away and realize, okay, first of all, like the NSA wouldn't make a spy device that's going to tell everybody it's a spy device. But I kind of realized.
I mean, it might, but
that would be.
They would be like, somebody debug this fucking thing. You can't have it going around. You're gonna have every conspiracy theorist and their sister being like, "It told me," But they absolutely would, because it's a Trojan horse. It's and they love those. I mean, Facebook. There's a reason Facebook and Google, they all got federal funding, which technically, by the way, should make it absolutely unequivocally against the Constitution for them to censor anything, because any entity funded by the government in any way falls under certain guidelines and laws that they have to abide by. One of them is the freedom of speech. So, but people, there's only a few people who are willing to even speak about that, let alone take action against a,
Right.
bottomless pocket corporation like Google or Facebook. But yeah, literally they break the law every time they censor someone's freedom of speech. And I'm not talking about hate speech or moderation and violence and things like that, because that goes without saying. I'm talking about the thought police, the Orwellian thought police that has decided to unveil itself. Really, 2016 was the great unveiling, thanks to they used Trump as their excuse. Now which begs the question. I wonder if, people ask me all the time, like, what do you think happened with Trump? People who are, pretty much in the know about how corrupt the election process is. And I'm like, hello, we're counting votes digitally. Why in God's name and on what, planet do you imagine that you have the ability to use a computer to count votes, all of which have to be in at a certain time to be valid? And 4 days later, you're telling the American people that it's still counting votes? What? It takes literally seconds. I don't care how many votes they are, once they're input. I'm like, what? It's like, it's a calculation. It's a simple calculation. Like, what do you think is going on over the course of 4 or 5 days that the computer is still counting votes? You know what I mean? Like, that's not what's going on. What's going on is they're meeting behind closed doors and trying to figure out, allowing public attention and opinion to sway and figuring out the best way to put forth the results they already planned on putting out. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the voting system in America. Because at least when you had paper votes, it was more difficult to try to rig, because you had many eyes counting and people literally counting the votes and double counting, and it was much harder to try to rig an election. And they used to try, and they would get caught. But I'm just like, people, what do you think a computer does? Like, am I missing something? You know what I mean? Like, how does it take 5 days to count a vote?
Have you seen the video that it was probably like 10 years ago, or maybe a little less than that, maybe like 8 years ago? No, it's probably about 10 years ago. There's a programmer they got up in court and had announced that he was hired to write some software that would allow the election to be rigged just by like a percentage or two, either way. And it was, I'm not saying anything about like what happened in this last election, but like,
no, you don't want to be called an election denier,
right? But the tamper proofness is definitely
oh my God,
it's kind of a fairy tale. Like, it is a fairy tale to especially, and this programmer talks about how easy it was for him to do, and how he was hired by a politician to do it. and I thought it was, it's really amazing that he actually came forth. Is he still alive? I think that's a good question. But the video is on YouTube still.
Yeah. And what they do is, so they'll isolate the incident and they'll localize it. And they'll be like, oh, well, it was only for the county of Alabama. And they'll pretend like, and they count on this, and they count on, it's like, the same reason why cartels send a bunch of mules, because they know that for the most part, most of them are going to get through. And if they catch one or two, they'll be like, woohoo, we caught him, but no one's going to care, because they're going to think it's insignificant. But the fact is, it goes on, and nowadays they do it in so many ways. People ask me, like, you think Trump's really going to win? I'm like, no, no, clearly he's not, like there's no way he can win. I'm like, what world are you living in? They're like, yeah, he's going to win. I'm like, no, dude, no, there's just no way. Do you think that they spent 4 years demonizing this man, changing the laws, the voting laws, putting ballots in front of people who are on Facebook reading, you go on Facebook, you read an article about how bad Trump is and what a racist he is. And then on the bottom of that article, it says, have you got your home voting ballot yet? We'll send it to you right now. Just sign up right here. It's like, oh, okay, fuck that guy. Here I am. Literally, that's what they used the health crisis, and they changed the laws and they allowed that to literally go on. So yeah, I'm like, no, there's no way he wins. People couldn't believe it. And then he was winning, and I'm like, don't go to sleep because he ain't coming up. You ain't gonna like what you wake up to. I don't care how much he's winning by. It ain't gonna happen. And I was right, of course. Sadly, I was hoping that I would be wrong. Not because I think Trump is great, but because I hope the system's not rigged, and I'm afraid it is, you know? Mm-hmm. Does that make me a denier? No. I know they've been trying to do this since Kennedy was in office. You know, I mean, it's one way or another, they try, you know, whether you're using mobsters or electronics.
It's like there's a Bill Hicks bit where he talks about how no matter who's in office, the same agenda moves forward. And so how he just pictures that when somebody gets elected, that they go, oh, congratulations, come on in here. And they go into a room and the lines are all drawn, and they show on projection screen, this projection screen lowers down and it starts playing the Kennedy assassination. And then the lights come back on and the windows open up again, and they go, okay, so any questions?
Yeah.
And just to let you know, like, who's really in charge here. Like, yeah, you won, but you're just a puppet.
That's right. And that's what that was about. I talk about that a lot, you know, in my videos and my shorts I make. And the impact of that event, it's resounding. And, you know, the fact that people who want to study that assassination today is very easy to, I mean, I wouldn't say easy, but once you get into it, it's not a mystery anymore of who coordinated their efforts to knock JFK off, and Bobby and Martin Luther King and Farrakhan, and, you know, every public, you know, persona that truly amassed power in public opinion and thinking, right? Kennedy was a quadruple threat, because not only had he captured the minds and hearts of a lot of Americans, but he believed in what he was doing. He was willing to make sacrifices to do it. And he was willing to put his neck on a line, even while he played their game. Yeah. And he was treated accordingly for that. You know, I mean, you roll around with the pigs and you're going to end up dirty. You can't promise mobsters and while you're trying to disband the CIA, you know what I mean? Like, man, he was in a lot of trouble. I
don't think you realize how quickly that they, and how, without a second thought, that they would take him out. You know, I don't know. Maybe he did. I'm not sure.
He did. I know he did, because he joked about it. But at the same time, I think that I think he underestimated just how deep the rot and corruption is, because, you know, you can believe that all the people around you are keeping you safe, but it just takes one person. You know what I mean? One person to omit or allow something, a bit of information. And when you have people like, you know, he was forced to take LBJ as his VP. LBJ is like, I mean, talk about, he is, if you look up corrupt politician in the dictionary, there's a picture of LBJ sitting there smiling over Kennedy's grave. I mean, he's as bad as they get. And he was going to go to jail, I think, but Kennedy, you know what I mean? So they make them make concessions first to get on the ballot, then to, you know, if you're going to advance, you're going to do this. So they thought, all right, we got this guy's dad. We got LBJ as his VP. We're going to have an eye on him at all times. What's he going to do? Well, Kennedy was like, I'll show you what I'm going to do, you know, and then they kept trying to do what they wanted. And he fired Allen Dulles. Dulles is one of the most corrupt people in the history of the United States. And that dude was the head of the CIA, and he fired him. This is the same guy who wrote the Treaty of Versailles. You know, and big money, oil money, you know, those are the families that went after Kennedy.
And I heard that he whoever wrote Operation Northwoods, or whoever requested it, that once when, because it wasn't Kennedy, but when he found out about it, he fired that person as well. He, listening to the speech, the one about where he mentioned secret societies, the ones he gave to the press, like when he says, he says, I'm not, don't misconstrue my words to think that I'm saying this. And he mentions having the press like cover up with
Right.
their mistakes or anything like that. He says, he says, but I am asking your help. And when he says those words, but I am asking you, like, it's such a human moment.
Yeah.
And it just like resonates with me, and it just like my heart breaks for
he spoke some. I mean, you can go back and you want an education about what's coming and what to be wary of. You just listen to Kennedy's speeches. Just listen to that man speak, because he worked on his own speeches with his speechwriter. Unlike, I would say, the majority of presidents, maybe Trump did some of his. I'm not trying to make a comparison, but Trump is one of the last presidents to actually say, no, I'm not going to read your script, which is why what he was saying was different than what every other politician was saying. But if you look at post-Trump, you'll notice that Biden, Trudeau, French prime minister, Macron, he's so corrupt. All of these guys say literally the exact same thing, about the exact same events. And that's because they're reading from the same script writers. Trump was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. They're like, don't say China. He's like, China did it. They hated him. He had to go. Too independent, corrupt or not, whether he meant well or not, doesn't really matter. That doesn't mean a thing, as far as they're concerned. Their only concern is whether they can control the entity who is, at least in the public's eye, the most powerful man in the world.
To maintain the illusion of freedom.
Yeah. Exactly. And they can't have someone who actually believes that and who may take steps, because they did give the president power. Then, of course, they quietly also signed that power away from him. So they had Bush Sr. did that. He was one of the first to really start to change the whole dynamics of government when he got in office, because he was just the fucking New World Leader poster boy. Yeah. I mean, the worst, one of the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
Responsible. I know you got into, and you told me the story too. We might as well touch on this. You told me in our correspondence about how you kind of realized what this world was, what was happening in the world, and kind of how, and like me, it took you a while to really digest what you were seeing, because you're raised with this idea of the world, and it's ideal. It's ideal. But in a lot of ways, it's a farce. It's naive. It's a fairy tale. And of course, to a degree, kids have to be sheltered for some of this stuff, because they would be traumatized from too young an age. But then at some point in time, you got to start to lift the blinders just slowly, like I do with my kids, not in a way that's going to traumatize them, but in a way that's going to allow them to see the truth of what's happening.
So it's not so shocking. Yeah.
Yeah. And you had a remarkable story about how that went on with you. Go ahead and share it, because you're on the right channel too.
Well, no, I just it was like 2009, and I started. I don't know what kind of got me onto that YouTube, the space in YouTube, where it was actually just started to present more and more videos that were kind of eye-opening.
Alternative narrative, yeah,
exactly, specifically about 9/11, and the first one was Loose Change, and the second one was Zeitgeist, and without taking them like for as if it's telling me what happened, I tried to take all information in from everything and then disseminate it, and then actually like look and see for patterns, usually amongst different sources, and then also use my own ability to kind of screen things and see. But there's enough information in those that it is something. I mean, it was just like, and had never even questioned anything that I'd heard before. Never questioned it. Like, why would I like it? And I remember being so proud of our president, our country,
Right.
when you see the video of like the fighter jets going into Iraq
Yep.
To retaliate after 9/11, and I completely support the troops. I really, I take my hat off to that. I have a lot of respect.
Oh, me too.
Because I believe,
Absolutely.
then people going into the service are doing it with for the
Totally.
most noble causes and intentions. And but it's the people that send them to war for reasons that aren't what they signed up for, and aren't what we as a country really should stand for. It blew me away how realizing, specifically Bush, realizing Bush had I'll say, I don't want you to get demonetized, but graped the vulnerability of the American people in that moment. Like it was just absurd, like completely absurd, and to say the least. That doesn't even do it justice.
Yeah.
And I mean, really, like there was it. Watching the each of those films, it took me like about a week, literally, to watch each of them, because I kept having this. I'd stop it and get up, and I'd be like,
it makes you uncomfortable.
Like,
you know what I'm saying?
No way.
Gives you a little bit of low grade anxiety. You're like, I'm the same exact way, dude. I'm like, I gotta piecemeal this fucking thing. Right. I'm not gonna let myself not watch it because it's making me literally a little bit sick. And angry, and like Jesus. And what I've come to learn to do is like pause it, come back to it. Don't let it, I'm not corrupt, but don't let it destroy your mood, and so I got to do it in piecemeal. But I'm like, holy shit, like I got a good truth barometer, regardless of what some of the skeptics who follow me believe, right? I trust my intuition, and I'm an actor. I trained in acting, and I trained with the best, and I got good at it. So if you're talking about someone regurgitating a script, I'll tell you 100 times out of 100 who's regurgitating a script and who's not. All you got to do is give them a sentence or two, even a sentence or two. I'll tell you who's rehearsed and who's not. Now, improvisation is a little more difficult, but still, there are key tells that you cannot fake. I don't care how good you are. Even politicians who are the best of liars, they get themselves in trouble because they think that they're so good at it that they just get up and bullshit. But there's always tells, and it just blows me away. I see these things. But I didn't mean to interrupt your
there's another thing that kind of blew me away there too, was like how sloppy they were at covering up stuff. Like,
oh my God.
Like it was like they really expect and were
JFK
right doing too. So, like expecting how dumb, excuse me, but the American people were going to be
ignorant.
And I mean, myself and as well. And
me too.
When I first was planted the seed in my head of questioning that, but like it was like watching back some of the clips, and some of the FBI agent posed as a witness that was immediately tying the exact official narrative, like
right there after, on the scene,
and he has two guys behind him in black suits just standing there while everybody else is running around the streets of New York in panic, and these two guys are just standing there like, I mean, they didn't even think that through. Like,
no,
it blew me away just how sloppy and how like half-assed the cover up was on a lot of things, not just that, but like
you can go back to JFK and see the exact same thing go on. But so this is what I've learned, unfortunately, that's what the spectacle's for. The trauma of the event it has this effect on people. And it's such they've learned, through MK Ultra taught them a lot, JFK taught them a lot, and every subsequent tragedy that they have orchestrated teaches them, and reinforces this, then that when people are traumatized, there's certain things that they're going to cling to most of them are internal, and so they're not diagnosing anything. They're not looking for pattern. They're in a low grade state of fight or flight or frozen, right?
Emotional responses. Yeah.
There's the logic part of their brain is like just completely taking a nap, so to speak. And that's the sad truth of human nature. And they take advantage of that. Yeah. I mean, I go back and I'm like, how the fuck? Excuse my French, how did anyone sit through? And I'm like, well, look at the buildings. Look what they televised. You know what I mean? They televised planes obliterating these buildings. I mean, not obliterating. They wish they were obliterated. But then they obliterated the buildings just to make sure people were watching, right? Because a fire is one thing. Buildings falling at free fall speed from 110 stories is another. So, I mean, it's the trauma is key to these events. And that's why they get you. Because I look back and I'm like, how did I fall for that? Oh yeah, that's right. I was so busy watching the people, falling out of a burning skyscraper that I forgot that, these things don't add up. Although I do remember specifically looking at the Pentagon and the so-called field in Pennsylvania and being like,
where's all the parts?
Where's Waldo? I don't, because wait, what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Strange.
Like, what?
Really strange.
Why are they showing a smoking field? It looks like somebody put a like a campfire out in a field.
Every other plane crash video I've seen, like there's lots of plane around.
Yeah. And then you have people today are like, well, that's because they shot it down and they couldn't tell anyone. I was like, what? That first of all, why wouldn't they shoot the ones down that hit the towers? That makes no sense whatsoever. I don't know what they did, but there certainly wasn't plane crashes. There was not a single plane part.
The hole in the Pentagon was like 30 feet wide or something.
And all the cameras
wide. And what about the wings? Planes have wings. Like there's titanium engines.
Ridiculous.
Like, yeah.
And people believe it.
Titanium engines were vaporized on impact.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm like, I did that spot. I don't know if you ever got a chance to watch it. I did that. We did the Believers vs. Skeptics, the truth about 9/11. And I'm like, it just boils down to this simplicity, right? Orange, the orange part of the fire means that it's only so hot. Steel melts at this temperature, period. There is no in between. These are the laws of physics as we understand and have accepted them. So you cannot convince a truly scientific physicist or person who is just going to stay emotionless about this, that you're going to melt a few screws here and there on a 110-foot skyscraper built to withstand just about anything and cause a basic free fall collapse. Like you really have to get people out of their thinking brain and just kind of hypnotized with the diarrhea coming out of the mouth, like, oh, wow, yeah, of course it's that, because the alternative would be that elements of the United States government have gone dark and rogue enough to create this. And look, oh my God, if you look at what they accomplished by that day, then you understand perfectly why they were willing to do it. It checked off like just lists and lists. I mean, the Bushes are, and don't get me wrong, it wasn't W's plan. That guy don't have a brain in his head. But the father,
he was the puppet for it.
Yeah. He looked just enough like his old man, and the old man before him who was outspoken Nazi supporter. Anyway, totally. Back to so you started to look at the world a little differently, and I know that was difficult for you at the time.
It was, and it was I literally went insane. I felt insane. I was and people were telling me I was insane for a month or two, and the only time I felt grounded, and it was like being lost at sea, and then finding another person, and then and being like just something to cling on to, something stable, like was when I encountered somebody else that was also aware of and waking up to what I was waking up to, and or had already gone through that phase, and to be able to talk to somebody and not be immediately dismissed, and that was just, it was so relieving on those moments when that would happen. My dad thought told me I was crazy, and I was really looking forward to seeing how he was going to handle and process the information. Like I had mentioned in my message here, I felt so it was such a new change in world and perspective of the world, and I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know how I'm supposed to go back to doing like whatever job I had at the time, or whatever daily activities, knowing this, and so I wanted to see how a male who's my father's supposed to be a role model would demonstrate how he would react to this kind of news, take this information and then continue on. And he refused to watch any of the videos, but it was really disappointing, because I was really hoping to kind of gain some insight and kind of some guidance from that. But yeah, it was my worldview had to reform, and then a few years later, when I was working with what I thought I said in my message too, was I thought was would be one of my dream jobs was working as a digital effects art studio. I remember walking in that day, or one of the days, and looking out the window and it lost its shimmer, the job. Like it wasn't fulfilling, because of, I felt like none of this really matters. Like I'm just being a pawn in the game, and having this information, knowing this stuff, and then just playing along still. I felt very kind of hollow. Like it was like the dream I had of getting into the film industry was all of a sudden like not an
we have that in common. We have that in common.
I was really determined to be a director. I still feel like I would like to do that, maybe not independently though, but but on a side note, if you don't mind, I started taking an acting class when I was 19, and I because I wanted to be able to be the best director I could be, and I wanted, eventually at some point, and I wanted to be able to know what the actor's going through. And Samuel Warren was my acting coach, and he was great. He's a great guy. He's still doing it too. But he'd make me very uncomfortable sometimes, because he would just be so in my face, and it was great. And I needed that. That's exactly why I was there. And it was, but I wanted to get past my own reasons for feeling uncomfortable. Like I don't like being the center of attention kind of thing. But he was so great. But we had class one night, and it was the night after the Academy Awards, and that I remember watching the Academy Awards the night before, and seeing this one guy, I don't remember his name. He won, and he got up to give his speech, and he said, now I'm going to thank the people I need to thank in my own way, in my own time. I want to take this opportunity, because there's 200 million people viewing, to share a message with everybody, and it's about the creator inside of you, and that just create whatever it is, whatever you feel inspired to do, whatever you feel drawn to create. And just it was so inspirational, and it was so, I just was like, that's the guy was just a hero in my eyes. Like, what a cool thing to do. Just perfect speech. And then in the next night at acting class, they were talking about it, and somebody said, well, he won't be working in the industry anymore. And I was like, why? Like immediately it was just like kind of butted in the conversation. And they said, well, it's because there's people that when he said that he was going to thank those people in his own way, there was people that were waiting to hear their name that night. And I just was like devastated. I was just like, no, tell me that learning that's how a lot of Hollywood is, I guess. But it's not, I've been told it's not how it all is, but that is a pretty, it's a super put a bad taste in my mouth about it. And so then I got
it's not all what it's cracked up to be. And I I've worked in Hollywood, and I've worked on TV, and I've created produced films and acted I've even acted as the lead actor in the films that I've produced, which is it's a strenuous job, but then at least I get to make sure that the film I'm going to put out is good. I have control over it, and but being a lead in a film, is everything I imagined it was and more, and also things that I could never have imagined, that it would be, and less. So it's like, it's a paradox, but it's I got to the point, and really this was probably closer to 2020, because my whole identity was wrapped up, in this film acting career, and winning an Academy Award. But I really wanted to express myself, and be able to express myself and my vulnerability, and I feel like that's what drew me to acting. And I also felt like I had a lot to offer with my voice, with what I had to say and how I could say it. My biggest problem was I never getting roles that allowed me to showcase, all the colors in my tail feather. Is, you're at the whim of other people. So even producing your own films, it's very limited, right? And then when 2020 hit, I was just knee deep in a lot of research about, let's just call them, certain medical procedures that we have been asked to take for granted, that we even we go so far as to trust our babies being being given from the time that they're born. And I was researching all this stuff, and this is before 2020. You could have a conversation about this, and it wasn't. I mean, it was heated, and some people were very already propagandized and kind of weaponized against any discussion of these things maybe not being what we're being told. But I was shocked at what I was learning, and I was also learning about the true history of the United States government, World War II. And then when 2020 hit, and I knew exactly who was responsible without even learning anything about what was going on, I was like, is everyone serious right now? Do we see what's happening? You know what I mean? Like, and then the industry shut down, and I was stuck in New York City. I was like, it's hard for me to imagine going back to it now. I will go back to the movie industry, and I'll definitely go back to the stage, because I loved acting in plays. I love plays. But I don't think I'll ever try to work in the television industry again. I mean, unless I radically change and I'm just like, yeah, whatever, if you want to pay me to do this, maybe. But it's even with all the money you get paid, it sucks, dude. It sucks. You're just like, you're there. You're just, even when you're, the big part of it, you're just waiting all day, and then they're finally like, okay, we're ready. And then you're doing your thing for like 3 seconds, and then another 3 seconds. And then it's like, so I'm getting paid thousands of dollars to just sit, in a dressing room, or
it's a weird, yeah, it's a weird, like
what am I doing with my life? I'm just waiting around to act.
I have gotten the sense, though, that like in recent years that there has been some, because when I watched that one Academy Awards and went to acting class the next night, that was 24 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's still more than just nuances of that today. But I also have gotten the sense from people I've talked to and a couple of friends in the industry that things are that people if you're like actually are recognizing more when somebody's not just a good person or a good actor, but a good person too, and a pleasure to work with, and because of how difficult it is when somebody's difficult to work with.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it's and it is one of the things that I really loved about filmmaking and the idea of it, and was the collaborative effect element to it.
Oh,
and
yeah, dude, that's
the huge team of people. Like when I've worked at graphic design studio, and it's 2 a.m, and me and one other guy are both like back to back on our computers plugging away to get this thing done. When we finish it and it's done and we make our deadline, like it's a huge bonding experience, and that's just between me and him. A huge team of people having come together. I think that's just something that I would love to experience. Cool, man. That's really awesome. That's
what I produced 6 feature films, and I acted in each one of them. And then as I produced more in films. I took bigger and bigger roles because I felt, more and more capable and responsible. And, but I started off, I would do a supporting role in the film, but I would produce the shit out of it. I would make sure it was fantastic, and I would step in, and I didn't want to be one of those guys who's like, oh, hey, who the fuck is he? But, he's the producer, and I wanted to kind of earn my way, work my way into a lead role of a film that I was, making the right way, so that people realize, like, okay, he's got this, he's doing it all, and he's doing it well. But it's a fickle industry, man. It's I hope that it comes around, and I think it is. But speak like, there's one. Well, I wanted to hit one more thing before we end this first discussion of ours. We talked about AI, and I was telling you how, like, I've just been learning some crazy things, hearing about some of the more, like, hear about, like, when David Icke talks about the Draco, the reptilian line that has infiltrated. I don't know if you've ever heard him talk about that, but it's pretty exotic thinking, and it's why people think that he's crazy and they dismiss everything else that he says, but everything else he says has been coming true for 30 years. So the problem with David Icke is he's either onto something or he's a freaking clairvoyant, you know what I mean? Like, or he can see the future. And so people are like, no, he knows what he's talking about, and he truly does see what the plan is. He also says that he thinks that these people who are, these oligarch elite families, and there's only maybe 12 of them, have been bred from, this reptilian line of ETs, some of them physical, some of them non-physical, and that's why they're so dementedly selfish, and ritualistic, cult-like, because that's part of this DNA they have, and it comes from way back. And I'm like, well, I also heard that this line is actually they answer to a sentient, malicious, malevolent AI, and that the truth behind this reptilian race is they get all their answers from this, it's almost like from a movie, like this evil sentient AI that tells them how to keep control of everything. And I'm like, damn, I never heard that before. And then I heard it from a few different whistleblowers, and I don't know if they're getting their information from stories or what, but they're like, the truth is, we have to wear, sensors, and we have to wear protection because there's rogue elements of AI that would try to, send a signal into a human brain that is not protected and hijack it. And in fact, these elites, the reason why they want to chip everyone and get everyone with all these electronic body parts is because then they can embark on their plan to hijack them and turn them into true slaves, and have control over the will, the free will that we're given with our DNA and our sentience. And I'm like, damn, that makes too much sense. That's scary shit. Right. And we talked about that, like some of the potentials of AI. And I said to you in an email, I was like, the question is, will we use technology to serve our greater evolution and in the fact that we are all spiritual beings having a human experience, or will we let this technology, this AI, steal what our humanity and what makes us all divine? Because I feel like we're quickly coming to a fork in the road, and we're going to have to decide. And I know you said that's, what are your thoughts about that? Because I know you see a lot of potential for good and bad.
Yeah, there's going to be a total shift. I mean, the world's not going to be even recognizable in 15 years. But when you say that, it reminds me like how I've thought about, like, for a while I was thinking, like, we're not ready for AI. Like, I didn't want it to come. I wanted it to slow down. I wanted it to but I don't think that there's we can slow it down enough to where we will become mature enough for where I would say, okay, we're ready for it now. But one of the litmus tests, I guess, that I was using to see if I felt like we were entitled to rightfully so to be able to create something like this and do it responsibly. And the comparison is like okay, so government. If you look at like our government has its feelers out in everybody's lives. Like it's something that impacts you daily, has the ability to completely destroy you and sweep you under the rug, or to enable you and to on both sides of the coin. So it can be helpful, it can be destructive. But the destructive element of it or potential of it is concerning. We should have that locked down. Like it seems like the one thing that we should all universally be on top of is removing and eliminating corruption from forming in government. And government is basically a stand-in for AI. It's a series of code, okay, of different codes that define its limitations and abilities and functions, and it is one of the most it's a cesspool of corruption. And because everybody seems to be fine with that.
That's a problem. We have a big problem.
For a while, I was like, we are not ready to develop an AI system. We don't have the maturity of as a society, but it's coming anyways. And so, I don't think that there's any reins we can pull back on, especially with like the companies that are coming out with it in order to stay current and stay in business and stay competitive. Like they're going to come out with as fast as they can. And now I've gone to hoping like, well, maybe it will save us.
Well, I mean,
it might, but
look, it could, because
it's going to be interesting.
It's going to be very fascinating because, I did a short that of course this video got no traction because of the words in it. I'm sure are a major red flag for Google. But basically I read this article in Reuters about how they took this AI program and these bunch of researchers decided to feed it I don't know how many different codes for like biological weapons and ask it to create more, and then within like minutes it created something like an obscene amount of new biological weapons. And then these morons published their findings, and I'm like, this is a perfect example of what's wrong, not only with science today, but with people at large. You could have asked that AI cures for cancer, cures for any disease. You know what I'm saying? You could have asked that, you could have fed that thing anything and asked it for, whatever. But that's what they did. Like, and I'm like, what? Or you could ask it to, if it has access, to start to expose, the corruption. And that is coming as well, because any device made by a human being is going to be as polarized as human beings. You're going to have people who try to use it to take advantage, people who are self-serving, and you're going to have people who say, we can use this for the greater good, and there's always going to be that contrast, because that's the world we live in, until things shift. And so I gotta believe and have faith that just as today there's a push and pull going on, like at least 75%, 80% of the FBI, those guys got to be good. They signed up for the right reasons. They do their job for the right reasons. Those guys are probably truly heroes in their hearts, right? But the other 20% of them, they're not there for the right reasons, or at least not anymore. And these guys are bought and paid for. They're basically mercenaries, and they get all the press. So you have 71%, there has to be a faction of all these, in every single regulatory body, every sort of investigative body that is like, you know what, enough.
Mm-hmm.
We are more than them. We know we outnumber them. Why don't we put our minds together and take back what this thing was made for?
Right.
And that's what the people have to do with this country, is come together, put their minds together and say, how do we take back what we were founded on? Because the only thing protecting us is what's left of the Constitution. And they're doing their damnness to whittle away at it and make and orchestrate events that give them reasons to whittle away at it. And if people don't wake up soon, it's going to be a thing of the past. So that's why I think all these conversations are important to have.
Have you heard of the poem "When Men Become Truly Free" by Colin Ryan?
No, I don't think I have.
I'll send it to you.
Send it to me.
Man, it's a good one. It's really good, but it's. I think a lot of people shy away from the call to action, because it means you have to be willing to sacrifice the comfortable couch and the microwave and the gossipy TV and people would much rather be distracted by all that but then realize the importance of what is at risk. Like we haven't it's a compromise people are willing to make, that being willing to give up a certain amount of freedoms to not have to lose everything for, or to fight for. And it's just how far are they going to push you before you say that's enough and it's too far. But
it's true.
It's really, but I think a lot of people like don't have a sense of unity. And I think that's a big part of it. If we could become a society that was amongst ourselves mature enough to be able to organize and see actually, and I hate the word tolerance because it just means putting up with, but not just tolerate each other's differences, but to embrace each other's differences,
value them.
By somebody else having a different opinion, a different perspective, a different value, a different priority. It's that and them being free to do so is the same thing as you being free to have what you're, what you
got to be okay with other people.
How boring would this world be if everybody liked the same soup and everybody liked the same music? And
that's not why we came,
no. And it's our differences, but it's appreciating our differences, and appreciate means to increase in value. And so to really have that be something that people embrace, I think is important. And the world is more connected now by far than it ever has. And we are so segmented and I think that, I've seen people on YouTube comments like saying things racially or whatever. My comment is just like, unity is our only power. Stop throwing it away, please. Like but it's
so well said, man.
Thanks.
It's so well said. And what you said about, appreciating someone else's opinion and information and we live in a world that is very methodically trying to destroy nuance and conversation and speech, and they just were talking about it at the WEF. They said the biggest threat right now is quote misinformation, which is just code speak for the opinion you have of the way things should go that I don't like and that I don't want you putting out because it's a damn good idea and people are going to like it. You know what I'm saying? That's what misinformation is all about. They don't care if they don't truly care about misinformation because they are the fount of misinformation. They are where misinformation goes to conceive and spawn. And you know what I'm saying? Like they don't. It's everything is backwards, and that's deliberate as well. If they want to make something that is going to take advantage of people's right for businesses, they call it like the free trade. Everything that is named as you look for the opposite meaning. Because that's the way they do it. They just slap the word child on it and pretend it's to protect the children, and then they can do whatever they want. They just play on people's emotions.
Patriot Act.
And we've come, exactly. The Patriot Act, I'm making a list I'm it's not even remotely done, but it's called my double speak, double think list. And I'm going to make a video. I'm going to go through and be like, the Patriot Act, this is what it actually does. Does that sound patriotic? All these different ones they do, but before we get going, my friend,
Mm,
I have to take you at least a little far out of the
let's
atmosphere
go.
here. Um, so have you ever seen, now maybe not just literally seen, a spacecraft or a UFO? It could have just been one of our UFOs, if you saw something that was behaving like one. But have you ever had any like interactions, like maybe in a dream or in a psychedelic experience, or something that you can't explain that you saw or felt or heard?
Sure. No, yeah, I have specific examples. I'm putting me on the spot, so I'm drawing a blank right now. But no, I
It's
have.
okay.
No, I absolutely have. Where where it's kind of reinforced my understanding of there being us all being connected, and also
Mm-hmm.
kind of also reinforcing my my idea of my understanding of maybe not my understanding, but the idea that the possibility of this being a simulation too,
Mm-hmm.
because of like glitches in the matrix kind of thing. Are you familiar with simulation theory?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, I
yeah.
am. Yeah.
Well, one thing that I've and I'm sorry if I'm taking
No, you're
your
good. You're good.
off into a tangent, but one thing I find interesting with simulation theory is that uh, it's people only seem to refer to it as a computer simulation
Yeah.
potentially, and something that would take place with advanced technology, but and how many simulations there would be running to for the population, then that, like Elon Musk says, because of that, like the vast, this is just the chance of this being a reality as opposed to one of the billions of simulations
Yeah.
is very slim. Um, what I haven't heard anybody else like talking about, which I find interesting, and I like to ponder this a lot, is we are simulation creation machines in
Yeah.
the sense that every night when you go to sleep, we dream, and we usually have like I think it's like three or four
Mm-hmm.
actual solid like deep REM based dreams, and in those dreams, like, have you ever had a dream where like either a significant amount of time passes, or you're in a situation, maybe even a different realm of your life, or different life altogether, and and everything feels normal. There's people there you're interacting with. You almost have like a sense of memories, and
Yeah.
if you were to think about them in your dreams, those memories would exist. There's other characters,
Oh, yeah.
but how? But then when you wake, I mean, it seems very real, like very real.
Right.
Where you'll wake up in a cold sweat if it's scary, like it's that
Right.
real. And that's been going on since the dawn of consciousness and self awareness, and we've been creating billions of simulations every night. And so, what I wonder is like, is there any way to prove that this isn't a dream, and that we're not just background characters in somebody else's
Yeah.
dream? Or like, you pass somebody on the street, and that person's actually dreaming that they're walking down the street,
Right.
and they needed to fill you in as a character that they're
Yeah.
passing. So in the subconscious of their subconscious, they spawned you and all your memories and this feeling of time and existence. And so you're really just
Wow.
emulated in the background of their minds.
It's
Kind of interesting.
it's mind blowing. It's profound. No, you know what you just reminded me of? What you just said really mirrors. So I spent 3 hours with Nassim Harriman at this conference. I don't know if you've ever heard of Nassim. Incredible dude. Quantum physics is what he has dedicated his life to. He's a scientist. He's on another level. The dude has been working to solve Einstein's unified theory of relativity with quantum physics for 30 years now. And he's done it, which is a problem because if you solve that equation and you also solve for free energy. Okay. So it's a big problem. But he has, and he took us through, it took him 3 hours, but he took us through the equations, took us through the Einstein's theory of relativity, how it was understood, why it was completely separated from quantum physics, which is funny because you have a bunch of scientists being like, we don't know, it's spooky. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's true. Why do scientists say quantum physics has no explanation Why don't they just say we don't fucking know what's going on?
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
Like, but because Einstein used words like spooky, I guess he opened the door for them, you know, like to describe quantum physics. But he went through Max Planck's work, you know, the Planck equations and the theory of relativity, and he showed what was understood about both and how he combined both the equations he used. And he said that, listen, everything is mechanical. There is no such thing as, you know, this separation between, oh, well, when things are really small, they behave differently. That's what quantum physics will teach you. If you look at, you know, that it changes with the observer. He's like, no, it doesn't change. It's all mechanical. There's a formula to all of it. And he took us through and he showed us, he broke down his math. He's like, if I did the equations, it would, you know, your brains would melt out of your ears, but I'm going to show you what we did. I can't go do the math because it's taken me literally 30 years to do the math. And I have it, you know, all in his place. He's like, but I have the math. I've showed 2 physicists, he said, and both of them, he's like, 2 physicists I trust. He said, I took them through this. And he said, both of them wept when I was done telling them. And what he figured out was that the mass of a proton is exactly the same mass as a black hole. Not approximately, exactly. And that every proton of our being, you know, is not only part of this fabric of reality, but is inseparable from. And that we're all, but you know, the difference between where I stop and you start is simply the signal. It's simply the frequency. And but the one thing that none of us can ever stop is this expansion that we're all a part of. And it was just mind blowing. And like he explained the big. I gotta send you this, dude.
Yeah.
He spent 15 minutes explaining the Big Bang, and you're just like, you know, it's so simply understood. He was like, you know, they tell me. He's like, I want to study physics. I want to study quantum physics. You know, can you explain to me about creation? And they're like, well, first there was a Big Bang. And he's like, so wait a minute. I'm trying to write down the math here. How do I write Big Bang? He's like, so basically just say the first part is a miracle and magic and we don't know. You know what I mean? Like, how do you do that? I'm trying to do math and they're telling me creation started with a Big Bang. He's like, so what happened? Is it done banging? Is it still banging? You gotta hear him go through his explanation of but it's just but what you just told me really reflects, you know, simulation theory, the way that he has described, you know, the results of it. And he said he's publishing a paper about it, and they're in the process of that. And I'm like, dude, I hope your bunker is deep because, you know, free energy is a problem.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not like it's not like it hasn't been done. It's been done since, well, shit. I mean, probably as far back as the 30s, but even in American soil since 54. And it's, you know, you're not allowed to wheel out a device which takes energy from the air. Okay. You know what I mean? You know what that would do to the energy economy and basically the oligarch trillionaire industry elite that has formed from America. You know, I mean, we pay for everything. Think about it, you know, water, electricity, power, you name it. So if people could realize that it was free, be a big problem to their income.
It's unmeterable.
Yeah. And Tesla, that's why Tesla's, you know, that's why they took his work and they stormed his hotel room. Why would they do that? I wonder. Anyway, yo, this has been real, my friend. There's so much more that we can talk about, and
much more.
and I know that we'll have another chance to get into it, man. But
cool.
I'm glad we had the time we did.
You too. Thank you so much.
It was a great pleasure, Chris. We'll talk again, and let's stay in correspondence. And I'm going to send you that 15 minutes to go blow your mind.
Awesome. I'll send you that poem when men become truly free.
And also the one you were telling me before we got started. The first one that you told me about the spirit being free.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate
thanks,
that.
Faust. You have a good day.
You have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.